It was 11 p.m., and I was on my way home after a late shift. The drizzle outside was steady, forcing my windshield wipers to keep up a rhythmic sway. I drove cautiously through the quiet, narrow streets that led to my subdivision, the freeway already behind me. My eyes felt heavy, and I blinked often to stay awake, my tired mind begging for sleep. Then it happened. Out of nowhere, a blinding lightning bolt struck a transformer on a telephone pole right in front of me. The world turned into a deafening flash of light and sound. Sparks rained down, bouncing off my windshield with sharp, metallic pings. My hair stood on end, and my shirt clung tightly to my arms from the sudden static charge. It was so close, I could feel the raw, electric force of it, as if the storm itself had reached out to grab me. I slammed on the brakes, the car skidding slightly on the wet road before coming to a stop. The blinding light faded quickly, but my heart pounded in my chest, loud and unrelenting. I sat there in the middle of the deserted street, trying to shake off the shock. My breathing came in shallow gasps, but something felt off. The explosion had been huge, the lightning so close that my nerves were still humming. Yet there was no thunder, not even a faint rumble. My mind reeled at the unnatural silence. I had experienced lightning strikes before, even from far away, and the thunder always came crashing right after. Not tonight. I continued driving cautiously, every nerve on edge. The rain seemed lighter now, but the silence outside felt heavier. My headlights illuminated the damp asphalt ahead, broken only by the occasional glint of raindrops. Then I saw him. At first, he was just a shadow on the side of the road, barely visible under the flickering streetlights. As I got closer, his shape became clearer, a man standing perfectly still. He wore a long coat, dark and drenched, and his face was hidden under the brim of a hat. Something about him made my stomach twist. He wasn't walking or seeking shelter from the rain. He was just standing there, facing the street, watching. I drove past him, my fingers tightening on the steering wheel. I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw him turn his head slightly, following my car with his gaze. The road ahead seemed darker now. Another flicker of lightning lit up the sky, but it was faint, and again there was no thunder. I felt an irrational urge to drive faster, to put more distance between myself and that man. I turned into my subdivision, relieved to see the familiar street signs and rows of houses. Their warm porch lights glowed faintly through the mist. But as I pulled into my driveway, a chill crept over me. There, at the end of the street, just barely visible under the dim street lamp, stood the man. I froze, staring at him through the windshield. How had he gotten here so quickly? I had been driving, and he had been on foot. It didn't make sense. My heartbeat thudded in my ears, loud and erratic. Shaking off the unease, I locked the car and hurried inside, my wet shoes squeaking against the tiled entryway. The house felt unnaturally quiet, the ticking of the kitchen clock the only sound. I double-checked the front door lock before peering through the curtains. The street was empty. As I turned to switch off the hallway light, I caught movement from the corner of my eye. I whipped around, heart racing. Nothing. I tried to calm myself. It had been a long, exhausting day, and the close lightning strike had rattled me more than I realized. I decided to head upstairs, shower, and get some rest. Halfway up the stairs, I heard it, a faint creak like a floorboard settling. I froze. The sound had come from the living room. Slowly, I turned my head to look back down the stairs, my pulse hammering. The darkness at the bottom seemed impenetrable, heavier than it should have been. I strained my ears, but all I could hear was the rain tapping softly against the windows. "Hello," I called out, but no response. I stood there unsure what to do. Every instinct told me to lock myself in my bedroom and call someone. But who? The police? What would I say? That a man I saw on the road might have followed me home? It sounded ridiculous. I climbed the last few steps, quickly locking my bedroom door behind me. The room felt safe, at least for now. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and hesitated before dialing the police. But then a shadow passed by my bedroom window. I could feel my breath hitch as I dropped to the floor. My house had no balcony, and no way for anyone to reach the second floor from outside. Yet the shadow had moved across the glass like someone standing there. Terrified, I said into the phone, "There's someone outside my house." The police arrived within minutes. I stayed locked in my room, gripping the lamp like a weapon. When they called out to me, I ran downstairs and unlocked the door. And there he was. The man stood quietly at the edge of the yard, his coat soaked from the rain, his hat hiding his face. The police shouted at him to stop and get on the ground. He didn't move. One officer stepped closer, hand on his holstered weapon. That's when the man finally raised his hands and complied. I watched as they cuffed him and led him to the patrol car. His head turned slightly toward me, just enough for me to see the faintest hint of a smile before he disappeared into the back seat. Later, the police informed me they had no explanation for why he was there or what he wanted. He wasn't carrying any weapons, tools, or items to suggest robbery or harm. He said nothing during the questioning. I don't know why he followed me or what he intended to do. Before we dive into the next story, if you're visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell icon to stay updated with our upcoming scary stories. Your support means the world to us, so please share these stories with your friends and family. Thanks. When my wife and I moved from Salinas to the Denver area, I thought I knew storms. After all, I had spent years in Florida, running through the warm afternoon rains. But nothing could prepare me for the storms of Colorado. They were fierce and loud, and sometimes they felt alive. Colorado's storms came almost daily from late spring through early fall. Cold air from Canada crashed into warm air from Mexico, and the Rocky Mountains seemed to pull the chaos right overhead. The sky would darken, and the mountains would vanish behind rolling clouds. Then came the thunder, the lightning, and sometimes hail the size of golf balls. Our dog, a fluffy American Eskimo named Jasper, hated those storms. Normally, he was fearless and independent, refusing to let me near him with a brush, no matter how matted his white fur became. But when the storms began, he turned into a trembling shadow at my feet. One stormy afternoon, I discovered that brushing Jasper during the thunder calmed him. His growls quieted, and he would sit still, letting me comb through his thick coat. It became a strange routine for us, Jasper trembling under the table while I brushed him, the windows rattling with every crack of thunder. But there was one storm I'll never forget. It started like any other, with dark clouds rolling in and the wind picking up. I had just finished work for the day and was standing on the back porch, watching the trees bend and sway under the gusts. Jasper was already at my feet, pawing at my leg. The first lightning bolt struck somewhere close, illuminating the yard in a white flash. The loud crack that followed sent Jasper scrambling into the house. I stayed outside a moment longer, drawn to the storm's power. Across the field behind our house, a figure stood. At first, I thought it was a tree, but as the lightning lit up the sky again, the outline became clear. It was tall, too tall for a person, and unnaturally thin. The head tilted slightly, as if it were watching me. I stepped back into the house, locking the door behind me. "Jasper," I called, but he was already under the table, whimpering. I tried to shake off the unease and grabbed his brush. He let me groom him as the storm raged on, the brushing a comfort to both of us. A few minutes later, the power went out. The house fell into darkness, except for the occasional flash of lightning through the windows. I grabbed a flashlight and lit a few candles. Jasper pressed closer to me, his whimpers growing louder. I glanced outside. The figure was gone. Relief washed over me. Maybe it had been a trick of the light, a shadow cast by a tree swaying in the wind. I told myself I was imagining things and focused on Jasper. But then came the knock. It was faint at first, barely audible over the storm. I froze, listening. The knock came again, louder this time, from the back door. Jasper growled a low, guttural sound I had never heard from him before. "Hello," I called, my voice shaking. No answer. I grabbed a kitchen knife and edged toward the back door. The porch light was out, but the lightning illuminated the yard in brief, harsh flashes. No one was there. Another knock, louder and more insistent, this time from the front door. My heart pounded as I turned, clutching the knife tightly. The storm outside seemed to grow angrier. The wind howled and the windows rattled as if something or someone was trying to get in. I crept to the front door, peering through the peephole. Nothing. But Jasper barked wildly, his eyes fixed on the window. I turned to look, and my stomach dropped. The figure was back, standing just beyond the glass. Its outline was sharper now, more defined. The lightning illuminated long, spindly arms and a featureless face. It didn't move, but I could feel its gaze. "Get out!" I shouted, slamming the blinds shut. The next few minutes were a blur. I locked every door and window, my hands shaking. The figure never moved closer, but its presence was suffocating, pressing down on the house like the storm itself. Then, as quickly as it had started, the storm began to calm. The thunder grew distant, and the rain softened. I dared to look outside again. The figure was gone. Relief was short-lived. When I turned back into the living room, I saw muddy footprints on the floor. They led from the back door to the table where Jasper now cowered. The door was locked, but someone or something had been inside. Panic set in. I grabbed Jasper and a flashlight and barricaded us in the bedroom. The night dragged on, every creak of the house making my heart race. I stayed awake, clutching the knife, until the first light of dawn broke through the windows. The next day I found no sign of forced entry, no broken locks or open windows. The footprints had dried, and I cleaned them up, trying to convince myself it had all been a nightmare. It wasn't the storm that scared Jasper that night. It was something else, something I couldn't explain. To this day, I don't stay outside during thunderstorms. Whenever the sky darkens and the wind picks up, I make sure every door is locked. The figure hasn't returned. In 2004, not long after moving to Florida, I found myself home alone during one of the scariest nights of my life. Hurricane Charlie was on its way, and the news was full of dire warnings. My wife had left a day earlier to stay with her family up north, but I decided to stay behind to protect the house. At the time, I didn't realize how unnerving being alone during a storm like that could be. The preparation was chaos. For days, the news was filled with stories of frantic shoppers emptying stores of essentials like water, batteries, and plywood. By the time I got around to stocking up, there wasn't much left. I managed to grab some candles, a couple of flashlights, and a few cans of food. Plywood, forget it. That had been gone in hours. With no way to properly board up the windows, I did what I could, taping them and hoping they would hold. The air was thick with tension, and I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that something was going to go wrong. That night, the storm arrived in full force. The wind howled, bending the trees outside like they were made of rubber. Rain lashed against the windows, sounding like a drum beat that wouldn't stop. Thunder rolled across the sky, each rumble seeming louder than the last. The power went out around 8 p.m., leaving me in near darkness, with only the flickering candlelight to push back the shadows. I wasn't scared at first. I told myself it was just another storm. Florida gets them all the time, right? But as the night wore on, something changed. The wind's howl took on an almost human quality, like distant wailing. Every creak of the house felt magnified, each noise sending shivers down my spine. And then I heard it. It started as a faint sound, almost drowned out by the storm. At first I thought it was just the wind, but it came again, a low, moaning noise, like someone in pain. It didn't sound like anything natural. My heart skipped a beat. I froze, straining to hear over the storm. The sound came again, louder this time, and it seemed to be coming from somewhere inside the house. I grabbed the flashlight and swept the beam across the room. Shadows danced on the walls, but everything looked as it should. My rational side told me it was just my imagination, amplified by the storm and the isolation. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The noise came again, now unmistakably close. It sounded like it was coming from the kitchen. My hands trembled as I crept toward the door. I told myself I was being ridiculous. There was no one here but me. Still, I couldn't stop the wave of dread washing over me. The kitchen was dark, the faint glow of the flashlight revealing nothing unusual. The sound had stopped. I stood there for a long moment, waiting, listening. Just as I was about to convince myself it had all been in my head, there was a loud thump from upstairs. I nearly dropped the flashlight. My throat went dry, and my pulse thundered in my ears. I didn't want to go upstairs. Every instinct screamed at me to stay where I was, but I couldn't ignore it. I had to know. The stairs creaked under my weight as I climbed, each step feeling heavier than the last. At the top, I paused, shining the flashlight down the hallway. The door to the guest room was ajar, swaying slightly as though someone had just passed through it. My stomach churned. I was certain I'd closed all the doors before the storm hit. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The room was empty, Nothing out of place, nothing to explain the sound. I checked the closet and under the bed. Nothing. My shoulders sagged with relief, but it was short-lived. As I turned to leave, the sound came again, this time directly behind me. I whipped around, the flashlight shaking in my hand. The beam illuminated the corner of the room, but there was nothing there. Just an empty corner and the steady drip of water from a leak in the ceiling. I bolted downstairs, my heart pounding. Back in the living room, I sat on the couch, clutching the flashlight like a lifeline. The storm outside raged on, but the house was eerily silent. Too silent, I couldn't even hear the usual creaks and groans of the house settling. Minutes felt like hours as I sat there, trying to make sense of what I'd heard. Was it the wind? The storm? Is my own mind playing tricks on me? Just as I started to calm down, a sudden bang echoed through the house. It sounded like the front door slamming shut. I leaped to my feet, the flashlight beam darting wildly as I rushed to the door. It was still locked, the deadbolt firmly in place. No one could have come in, yet the sound had been unmistakable. I opened the door and shone the light outside. The porch was empty, the storm raging unabated. I shut the door and leaned against it, my breath coming in shallow gasps. That's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. On the floor just inside the door were wet footprints leading into the house. I followed them, my legs feeling like lead. They led to the middle of the living room and then stopped. Just stopped. There was no sign of anyone, no trail leading away. The rest of the night passed in a haze of fear and confusion. The strange noises stopped, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I sat on the couch, clutching the flashlight until the first light of dawn broke through the storm clouds. When the storm finally passed, I searched the house from top to bottom. There was no sign of an intruder, no explanation for the noises or the footprints. To this day, I have no idea what happened that night. All I know is that I was alone, or at least I thought I was, and I've never felt fear like that again.